several of these mini lectures, partly because it's a very complex and difficult topic, and partly because, I can't keep two thoughts together, so I come at it a different way every time. Oh, that gives it fun for me. Anyway, today I want to talk about magic. I want to explain where it comes from, what it is, who can use it, and why. For all you Muggles out there, we didn't have that word in my old worlds, but it's very applicable, especially in this continuum where magic is a very rare, almost non-existent material force. Pardon me. So here's what happens. When a universe is young, it still has a lot of materials in it that are gone from your familiar older universe because they break down over time, like radioactive materials break down over time. So once upon a time there was a whole lot more uranium than there is now. Huh? True story. Now, the minerals that were essential to the emission of magic were minerals that appear in what physicists call the island of stability. This is a place along the two drip lines, the neutron drip line and the proton drip line. This is the true stuff. This is physics. Even I can do law if I have to. But law can't do chaos. Oh, we win. So anyway, they've got the neutron and the proton drip lines. And they are how many neutrons, how many protons are in that nucleus. And if the numbers balance in certain ways, there are resonances and there are rules for it. But anyway, if they balance in certain ways, you get a stable nucleus. So X amount of neutrons go into X amount of protons to make a stable carbon atom. And if there aren't enough neutrons, then you get a radioactive carbon atom, like carbon-14. It doesn't last forever. Eventually, it emits some particles and decays into other things called byproducts. Yes, indeed. So, magic, in some universes, is produced by the breakdown of these materials that only appear in young universes and break down into our familiar materials by the time you get to the age of your universe, which is I think it's my third universe right now. So there are different amounts and different rules in different universes, but generally all three of my universes have been reasonably similar. Just the first two were much younger, and so there was lots of these island of stability metals that we called Deminsk and Hecatium. Yeah, these are the magical minerals. As they break down, rather than releasing the usual burst of alpha particles and photons and neutrinos, as would happen usually in radioactive breakdowns, alpha particle emission, all that stuff. Instead, in the magical minerals, when they break down into their first set of byproducts, they give off their energy, this binding energy, released in any breakdown like that, in the form of a new gauge particle to you people, but one that's very familiar to wizards everywhere, called the Kell. The Kell is the gauge particle of what we like to call the standing magical field, which is the aggregate emission of all these breakdowns. Because the magical force extends everywhere. The magical field is not affected by distance, which is why teleportation is possible. I do not recommend it. Teleportation never works as intended. Remember Captain Kirk's experience through the broken transporter when he had to look up at Mr. Spock like this and say, "I have the strangest feeling my face wants to sit down," as they had put him together. So, anyway, this magical standing field carries a fair charge in a young universe, and that charge is potential that can be used to do work in the physical world. That all made sense. I know it's me, so it shouldn't, but it did, because as an Ikon of Xaos, I'm able to do anything if I want. I just get bored with law very easily. And with good reason. Who wants to stand in lines all day? And what is law except organizing things into lines, right? What's DNA? Huh? So anyway. Oh, and as I proved before, that's all just a momentary lapse of reason as far as the universe is concerned. And everything is basically chaos relieving the world from itself and leaving law in its place. I've explained that in another video. So, that's because we clean up when we leave, not like law. Law leaves a mess. So anyway, to be able to use this potential power source, this magical standing field that is created by the release of these Kell particles into the, I think it's called the 11th quantum field. I could be wrong because I'm not a physicist, but I'm fairly familiar because I work with stuff all the time with Ibn Skinib, Abu Ben Fazali, and that sort of thing. Yeah. There's even a cantrip that'll let you pick your nose, but it's been known to kill people, so I don't use it. Anyway, I'd rather use my finger anyway. It knows its way. You know, like a horse going home after you're drunk. It knows how to get there. Oh, my finger's like that too. I can keep watching wrestling. So anyway, the people that can utilize this potential power source, that can access it, have a specific, one of a few specific genetic cues to allow them to interface, to sense, to manipulate the standing field. They're called wizards. Yeah. Or potential wizards, or shaman, or hedge wizards, or witches, or you see what I mean? The people that can manipulate this magical standing field to do work in the real world are magic workers, or magic users, or as my old friend used to say, who conquered more than one world on his own, he used to call them spellbinders because they bind spells to do work. Any way you use it is fine. Most people get what you're talking about. But I use wizards because I am a wizard myself. I am the greatest of all Canadian wizards, eh? And if you don't know that, why that's funny, well, you're not Canadian. So anyway, wizards have a genetic tick, one of their genes, that allows them to work, or at least to interface or to sense, to be aware of the magic, this potential in the standing field. Some of them can see it directly. Some of them feel it as pressure on their skin or burning. Some of them don't really know it's there, but they know if they make certain activities, which we call spellcasting, that they will invoke such powers if they exist. Yeah, that's how that works. Many of the wizards I've known worked blind. They just hoped there was magic. Now, I'm very fortunate in that I can see magic. It's like a green haze of tiny little dots. Sometimes I see Obi-Wan Kenobi's face in it, or Darth Vader's, and they're smiling at me. And when a guy smiles at you through a mask that makes him look evil, it doesn't make you happy, let me tell you. Then they put their arms around each other and start kissing. And, that's why I don't watch Star Wars anymore. So anyway, I can see the magical ambience. And if I move my hands through it in a certain mental state, I can move it, concentrate it to small amounts. The amount of energy dispersed like this can't do any work. But when the wizard concentrates it by using his body as the focusing lens, and that requires certain rigid muscle memory activities to make it happen, he can do, or she can do work in the real world. Lift things off the ground, make things heat up, make them explode for some people. Now, I'm not big on mental magic, because why should I be, right? I'm as mental as I need to be. But there are people that claim to be able to throw love spells on other people so that those people will fall in love with the first thing they see. And I tell you what, don't ever do that on anyone when they're drunk, because what if the first thing they see is the porcelain god? Then try to get them out of the bathroom because you're in a hurry is not going to be a good day, right? As they say in South Park, you're going to have a bad day. So, only people that have this genetic tick, there are a few different genes that can be so affected, have the ability to sense or to interact with this magical fluid. It's really a standing field, but, expressed in the form of its gauge particle, which are Kells. There's a Kell ambience and a Kell density. They have a tendency to want to disperse, so they fill the universe. And because they're not like the more powerful forces, they extend farther, like gravity. The difference between gravity and magic is that you can concentrate magic through the lens of the wizard's body. When he does that, some of the energy he directs in spells is randomized as heat. Like any work done anywhere is randomized as heat. This is all physics. You people that are like school people, you'll know just what I'm talking about. I'm no dunce. Well, forget about that. So anyway, people that don't have that sense, that ability to interface, that don't have that particular genetic tag, cannot work magic. Many of them will never be able to work magic, no matter how hard they try, no matter how many books you read, no matter how many people you talk to, even if you take instruction from a legitimate wizard. If you don't have that genetic tag, that cue, you'll never be able to work in the magical standing field. That isn't my fault, so you know. That's why we don't see people levitating down the street. That's why we don't see people throwing fireballs without a whole lot of preparation that's called a rifle or a grenade launcher. See what I mean? Instead, people in your world have to create physical objects to mimic the effects that wizards get through magic. Yeah. In my old campaigns, in my old worlds, my universes, alternate planes, we call them the myriad ways because there's so many of them. And some of them are very, very similar to each other. In some, they say, there are other people just like you. Not just like me because I'm an icon. I'm original. There's only one Eshkalar anywhere. And if he appears in your universe, you are graced beyond all universes. At least in my mind. You lawful archons of law, you might not like that stuff, but you wouldn't have an existence if there wasn't an icon of chaos to force you to be called up out of the existing ambiance. Because law doesn't want to concentrate on an individual. Law wants to deal with the whole picture. Chaos wants to zoom down on the individual level and see that that tadpole has two tails. That's important to me, but law doesn't care. To them, that's a statistical anomaly. Statistics. They can be used to prove anything. 14% of all people know that. Homer J. Simpson. So, if you don't have the genetic tag, you cannot learn to manipulate magic. Some animals are born with that tag. Dragons and certain others can learn to be spellcasters without the genetic tag that we consider necessary. But they are born. The magic is strong within them, Luke. Dragons can't even live without a strong magical ambience. Neither can elves. That's why you don't see elves in the earth anymore. Because they had to leave. It's a true story. So anyway, that's why Eden is no longer a living place. Once the magic faded, the magical creatures had to find other places or die, or fade away, pine away into nothingness. That's why there are no unicorns. That's why there are no manticores, thank goodness. And it's also why there are no more shmoos. If you people don't know what a shmoo is, you should have lived in my last universe, because shmoo is cool. You'd call it a wish beast here, because it'll turn into almost anything its size that you desire. How about that? We don't need love androids in my old universe. So anyway, if you can't work magic, it doesn't matter, because the wizards can. And I've explained to you what magic is and who can work it. Next is, how does a wizard work magic? Can you just point your finger and something happens? No. You have to put your mind in the correct form so that your concentration is affecting the standing field of magic, affecting its concentration, its dispersion. Yeah, focusing it through your body as a lens so that you can do work. Randomized energy, which heats up your blood, which is a problem. It's a limiting factor because there's no free lunch. The third law of thermodynamics clearly states that nothing can be that cool except me. Well, and Dairon. But anyway, for those of you who don't know Dairon, he's the other icon of chaos. Because of course chaos is going to have two. Everybody would be like, well, it's an icon. It means you can only have one. You so don't understand chaos. So anyway, so the wizard must focus his or her mind into the appropriate channels to be able to manipulate the standing magical field. And for each effect that he or she wants, there's a slightly different focus that needs to be attained. So a new wizard will only know a few such patterns and will only be able to cast only maybe one or two spells. And if he or she tries anything else, when you try to concentrate magic without having a clear idea and a clear habit as to what should occur next, you might randomize all the energy you've concentrated right through your body. Which means you'll pop like a poodle in a microwave oven. Which is why they have warnings for wizards. And why many people don't want to be wizards, even if they have the knack. See, there was a poem I learned in school about this. That if you can't concentrate on the form of spell you're casting, things will go bad in a hurry. Here's how it went. There once was a girl from Darnassus who's famous for skipping her classes. While casting a spell, the thing went to hell, and the poor girl was turned into gases. See? Don't end up like her. So if you're going to cast a spell, you have to learn each motion that focuses your mind into that particular realm where you can access that particular effect you're looking for, where you can focus the magic to do the work in the appropriate way, as though you were the lens. That lens must change to get different effects. And you have to change your mental state in order to change that focus. That's done by casting spells. Sometimes your focus is best gathered by using a specific critical word. Sometimes in some strange and ancient tongue. Sometimes in your normal common tongue. And then you might make a physical action. You know, you ever watch Naruto and you see them make all those ninja signs? That's part of spellcasting. That's a crippled copy of real spellcasting. And so is the inciting a spell like it's a big long poem and, you know, everybody thinks you're cool because you're rhyming somehow once in a while. And that's not it either. Each spell has a complexity level or a power level. So complexity is equal to power for spellcasting. If you want to cast something extremely complex, it will require more focus and more elements of that focus in order to create that effect. Or if a spell wants to throw more power around, so I could throw a one finger, which is a tiny little jet of flame, and light a cigarette, and that would be a first level spell or a cantrip, very simple spell, requiring a minimum of mind focus and concentration. Or I might want to throw a meteor swarm, which is a huge, powerful spell, and that requires quite a bit of motion and concentration and the right words spoken. Yeah. Each one of these particular actions that you use to focus your mind in the right order and in the right way to cast a spell is called a tick. All right? And the number of ticks it takes for you to gain that specific effect, whether you invented it yourself or whether you learned it from someone else, the number of ticks it takes, the number of specific hand motions, dance motions I call it, semantic motions they call it in games, but it's dance. Each dance move is part of that spell. Each word is part of that spell. The combination of dance moves and words creates that perfect channel, that conduit of your mind to create the lens effect that you need to make that thing happen. Somebody's shoes untie, or, you know, a fire in the fireplace, a cold spot in a room where there shouldn't be one. Yeah. So, now that's a general expression. So if I want to cast a mid-level spell, okay? Let's try Null Sphere. I'm not going to do it because, first of all, there's not enough magic here to be able to throw a decent fourth level spell. And in the second place, I haven't cast it for a long time. I would need to practice. I hate practice. So, anyway, you cast a null sphere, which is a spell that prevents lower level magics from affecting you, right? A null sphere requires first a hand motion, and as you turn your hand into the second motion, you speak a word and you lean forward like this. That's 4 ticks. Those 4 ticks create the appropriate mental focus to create the lens that you want out of your mind so that it can focus magic into the spot where you want the work to be done and affect the work that you desire. And that's the whole story of magic. Now, magic can be burned out in an area through too intensive spell use, especially this is why we don't make magical machines, because magical machines that charge from the ambiance could just suck all the magic out of a universe trying to get something done. You know, people don't realize what's happening. They're not thinking. Which they should. You should all think sometimes. Even I do it. Wait, even I do it, and I'm Eshkalar. So that's your first story about wizards and magic and spellcasting. And why you can't do it, why I can't. And why I can't do it here, but I can do it elsewhere. Lecture 2 will come soon enough.